Hey there everyone, it's Az here, and today we'll talk about a specific weapon I'd like to recommend to new players getting into Splatoon. A few days ago I made a video about choosing your weapons, and understandably not everyone liked my idea that you should really test out each weapon in the test range since it's free. Even though I still think that's the best way to grasp of each weapon category in Splatoon. But to also help new players who are looking for a concrete recommendation, I wanted to make a video such as this one. I'm also thinking about potentially making guides for each weapon type, or rather introduction to them. Not sure if new players would be interested in a video series such as that, but let me know in the comments and we'll see about it. The weapon we'll talk about is the Splattershot, which I believe is a weapon you can acquire in the weapons shop as soon as level 2 maybe. Sadly I can't check it back since I'm higher level, but I think it's the first weapon you can purchase. Now the reason I recommend this gun for new players is first, I think the Splattershot is a pretty generic weapon when it comes to Splatoon, and it won't teach you any terrible habits or niche playstyles, but instead will teach you all aspects of the game. The Splattershot has a decent fire rate and range, meaning it's long enough to play around a bit with your ink range so you can learn to use your weapon's shooting range as an advantage against other players, which is an incredibly important part of Splatoon. And it's also not too short range to force you into ultra aggressive playstyle like if you were to play some dualies or rollers or any melee weapon, so the range is just perfect. Having decent range is also beneficial to practicing your aim, as being close range can have you rely too much on the bigger hitboxes of players, or just rely on your movement rather than aiming, which is a thing when it comes to playing with consoles. And if you're just transitioning also into motion controls, then I definitely advise to use a bit longer range weapon to get used to movement. And in case you haven't tried motion controls yet, I can't recommend it enough, as Nintendo's technology for it is probably the best, and motion controls are widely recommended by a large majority of the community and professional players alike. I believe most professional players are actually using motion controls. It also helps that the weapon can be unlocked very early, since the leveling can be quite a chore in Splatoon 3, especially if you're trying to unlock a weapon that is really far back in the shop. So I think the gun being generic is extremely important, as there are weapons like the new Reflux that we talked about the other day, or let's say a roller that a lot of people, especially new players, love to try. And these weapons teach you a very specific way of playing Splatoon. Not that there is anything wrong with that, but when you are new, I personally would recommend to get a standard experience so you have a good base of comparison when it comes to choosing guns. If you play the Splattershot, you will have a good base to compare range, fire rate, but also sub-weapons and specials that I want to talk about next. The Splattershot also has a decent kit with the suction bomb and the Trizooka. I find it important to also teach new players the importance of constantly using your kit properly and not forgetting them, as one of the few mistakes I think new players tend to do is just focus on painting and shooting, while forgetting that you have sub-weapons and a special. The suction bomb is a very good aggressive sub-weapon for pushing areas and also getting some easy splats. It's fairly standard, like any grenade would be in a shooter, so it's nothing too hard to get used to, but also has a value to everyone that you can understand and appreciate when it comes to choosing your next weapon especially. So you'll see the pros and cons of losing a good sub-weapon for a worse one, since these are fixed on guns for balance reasons. Then we have the Trizooka, which is not my favorite, but it's also a decent special. It's not easy as the Tenta missiles, which I love, but that is exactly the reason I recommend this gun. So it also teaches you to get used to some of the more mechanical specials where you at least have to aim and it's not just a lock-on and get some easy splats gadget. But also, just like with the sub-weapons, it's a good base of comparison when you switch to another gun. So you will be able to know are you switching a better special for a worse one, or vice versa, so you can value the specials and sub-weapons and weapons, and it's not just about the gun itself. Now the Trizooka can be tricky to use, but once you master it, you'll notice how powerful it can be to lock down zones and get corners. But it will also help your aim if you're interested in weapons such as a blaster in the future, so it has multiple purposes. It teaches you a lot. In Splatoon, it's equally important to ink your turf and fight. And something I see a lot, going back to what I mentioned about new players choosing weapons such as the roller, is that at the beginning of a match or even during it, they tunnel vision too much into just painting. And I see people just running around in circles in the base painting the ground when the rest of the team is just getting splatted and then we lose. Some weapons, I admit, are just so satisfying to paint with that subconsciously you just want to focus on that part of the game. The Splattershot, being somewhat generic, is decent for both painting and splatting, but it's not exceptional to when it comes to painting turf, so it will somewhat encourage you to play more aggressively and adapt to a more aggressive playstyle, which I think is healthy getting into Splatoon. Because again, if you're too passive, you're not really helping your team, and if you're splatting your opponent, then everyone can paint a little bit more of the turf. So splatting is probably the most important thing to do still. Now, I know this might look a bit fishy, like I'm recommending a weapon that is not as good, but the Splattershot is a very good weapon in my opinion, and what I want is actually the opposite. Like any competitive game, there are always choices and weapons that get you easy rewards and success at the beginning, especially against other newer players. But as I said earlier, they can be somewhat of a trap, teaching you bad habits or techniques which not only won't work against better players, but it will be quite hard to get rid of them once you are used to playing that way. So those habits are just hard to get rid of. But just in case, if you're looking for a really fun weapon to mess with, the Reflux 450 we talked about in the previous video is an exceptional weapon, and everyone should try it out really, just because of how fun it is, and it's the perfect idea of a niche weapon that can teach you bad habits, but it's just really fun. As I mentioned in that video, it just feels like it is the shotgun of Splatoon that also has pretty decent range and a fantastic kit. I think it has the Tantum missiles, which is, it's just too much fun in solo queue. If you haven't tried the Splattershot yet though, give it a good run. It's an easy to use and balanced gun with great teaching potential, so why not give it a try, especially where you're leveling up in the game, which will take days to weeks. It's always good to try this weapon, and I think it will teach you the base skills the game needs, from aiming, using your range, using your specials, and sub-weapons. Now, as a bonus tip, if you struggle on switching weapons and need a little bit of a push to try other weapons, I always recommend to jump into Splatoon's PvE mode, Salmon Run, as this mode gives you a random base weapon to play with each wave, and it's a fun way to honestly try multiple types of guns without having to commit to anything, and actually get some experience using them and aiming with them, as Salmon Run can be pretty hectic and crazy. It's just really, you're having fun and seamlessly your aim gets better. It's just really good. But I think this will be it for this video. I hope you'll give the Splattershot a try, and if you do, let me know in the comments how you feel about it and if it helped you get some experience for Splatoon. I would also like to say a big thank you to everyone supporting my recent Splatoon videos. I tremendously appreciate it, as it's always so hard to do transitions on YouTube, but the Splatoon community has been nothing but supportive and helpful. I do aim to create a lot more content for the game of all kinds, so look forward to that. And if it sounds interesting, then consider subscribing for daily updates and just to support the future of the channel. Thank you for watching everyone, and I'll see you all the next time. Bye bye.